Hi, we're going to be looking at one of the most famous Hindu pieces of art today called Shiva Nataraja. Shiva is a Hindu god, I think you know, and Nataraja means Lord of the Dance. We've been trying to understand Hinduism by reading about it, looking at text, and in a way that's a problem because Hinduism is a very visual religion, and today we see what Hinduism is all about. You might just take a minute to open up a tab and Google Shiva Nataraja. Just Google these words. You can leave the A off or not, depends on the translation. You will find various versions of this image that you see on the screen. Let me just pause here and see what you can find. You have a note sheet to go along with today's slideshow, so you might want to keep this out open next to you. What we're trying to figure out here is, what does this statue mean and what does it tell us about Hinduism? It's a little bit of information about Shiva and his family. You can think about how Shiva is what we call a paradox. We're going to talk more about that. But for right now, let's just look at this thing. Meaningful things to notice about the statue. So looking at the images that you found or the image that I have up here, just make a list of all the things you see. No detail is too small. Let's pause here for a couple minutes. Write down everything you can see. First of all, I want to start this off by saying that art is such an excellent way to really understand complex ideas from another culture. So for our cultural competence here, looking at art is one of the best ways, I think, to do that. And Shiva Nataraja is, some would say, the best summary of the genius of India as you can ever get in visual form. It's a really great summary for you visually of what Hinduism is about. This is a statue of Shiva here. It's not Shiva Nataraj. He's not dancing, obviously. You know, when I lived in Delhi for 10 years, you would pass by this statue every time you took the highway out of town, one of the major highways. It's huge, right? And you can see this little guy standing down here. But you also see maybe some of the same things you saw in the image of Shiva Nataraj. You know, I wonder if you noticed any of these things in your version. Okay, so Shiva is known as one of the three main gods of Hinduism, along with the creator god Brahma and the preserver god Vishnu. These are nice little categories here. Vishnu and Shiva are super popular and they're often depicted in art. Brahma, much less so. He is the original creator god, the original life force of the universe, you might say. And for Hindus, that is just too abstract an idea. Most humans cannot wrap their tiny little minds around the largeness that is the universal consciousness, right? God. So he's very, very seldom depicted in art. The other two, much more often. They are kind of sub-gods with which we humans can more identify. But even though Shiva is known as the destroyer god, it is not that simple. Like everything else in Hinduism, the answer is kind of like yes and no. And that's because Shiva is meant to represent a paradox. And a paradox is a statement that seems like it cannot logically be true, but if you actually think about it on another level, it's kind of really deeply true, right? So I'm sure you've heard the saying, less is more. And your math teacher might be like, what? No, less cannot be more. These are two exclusive things. But if you think about it, in some ways, maybe you've had this experience that less actually can be more. Logically, in one way, it doesn't make sense, but on some other level of truth, maybe, yes, it does. Same thing with, you gotta be cruel to be kind. Well, you know, if you're being cruel, you're not really being kind, are you? Well, these guys would say.
But that don't coincide with the things that you do. And when I ask you to be nice, you say you gotta be cruel to be kind in the right measure.
Okay, just some nice cheesy 70s music for you there. Yeah, so what? You gotta be cruel to be kind? Those guys obviously are revealing some deeper truth. More my speed musically is a band called Fugazi, where the lead singer is talking about how he closes his eyes so he can see. A doctor might be like, no, dude, it doesn't work that way. Life broke the surface so I can Great band. You can look them up. Fugazi. So I close my eyes so I can see how can that be physically possible, but maybe he's saying something on a deeper level. Let's take a look at that. How is Shiva a paradox? On the one hand, Shiva is a family man. Okay, so he's often depicted. You get these family portraits, right? Where here's Shiva and his wife Parvati, Shiva and his wife and his son, and a little animal down here. Maybe you can notice, right? Let me explain his son here for a second. His son's name is Ganesha, one of the most popular gods in Hinduism. Kids especially love him. Why does he have an elephant head? The story is, I mean, you can look this up. Wikipedia will tell you the story about how he got decapitated by his own dad. Well, okay, but here's the story. In some ways, it's not Shiva's fault. Shiva also goes off to the mountains all the time for reasons that you will understand a little bit later. Meanwhile, his wife, Parvati, gives birth to their son. Shiva doesn't know this. One day, Parvati is taking a bath. She tells her son, go guard the door, don't let anybody come in. So here's little Ganesh standing there, like, doing his job, and Shiva comes home. Shiva's like, let me in, kid. And Ganesh is like, no, my mother said not to let anybody in. Shiva's like, out of my way, and like, in his anger, cuts off the kid's head. Parvati comes out, she's like, you idiot, what did you do? That's our son. Fix this right now. So Shiva runs off and gets the first living head he can find. It's an elephant head, and he sticks it on Ganesh. Right. So he brings him back to life, and he has this cute little elephant head. So he's got a whole family, right? But at the same time, he's this god of ascetic. Yes, he's supposed to have connections to this world, but on the other hand, he's supposed to be this all-knowing yogi who lives this ascetic life where he gives up all attachments and goes off to meditate in the mountains, right? The idea behind asceticism is that you are focusing on not this world, but you are putting this world aside to focus on the next world or some higher world. Though this is actually a Hindu ascetic, right? And they put ashes on themselves. That's why he's so white looking. And here's Shiva up in the mountains. You start to recognize some of the same symbols, but sitting up in the mountains as an ascetic. So this is a contradiction. Why would you be connected to this world with a family, but also not connected to this world as an ascetic? Another seeming contradiction is Shiva's depicted as the lord of the hunt. He's often represented with weapons like javelins and this trident here, or a bow. Here he's sitting on a tiger skin, right? So he's the god of the hunt. Well, let's pause here for a second. Why do you think a trident is such a fitting symbol for Hinduism? Okay, well, back to the point here. But paradoxically, at the same time that he's the god of the hunt, he's known as the god of nature. It's one of the famous lines in a Hindu text says, he extends his grace to all and gives creatures experience and liberation. That's why you often see him depicted with his nature sidekick, right? Which for Shiva is a bull. Many Hindu gods have like an animal sidekick that you often see depicted with them, you know, showing their connection to nature. And so, god of the hunt, right? Killing tigers, but yet also showing some connection as the god of nature. The most common interpretation of Shiva is Shiva's a destroyer, right? So here he is looking at this like this terrifying figure. He's got this third eye, which is considered like this symbol of higher consciousness, but also it's so intense, right? It's like a laser. There's some story that one time, like some god was bothering him or disturbed him in his meditation. And so he opened up that third eye, and the light, the insight that extended from that eye was so intense that it burned this god to a crisp. And Parvati had to come and intervene once again. And they're like, Shiva, what have you done? Like bring that guy back to life. Another story of Shiva and destruction, there's a story in the Vedas where Shiva was not invited to some big party that the gods were having because they considered him kind of uncivilized. So his wife at the time, her name was Sati, jumped into a fire to just immolate herself, to burn herself, kill herself. I'm not sure exactly how this is like sticking it to the gods, but that was her form of protest. And when Shiva found out and he came and saw this, he was so angry. He began this really angry dance, destructive dance, and he was like nearly destroying the universe with this dance. But then afterwards, he calmed down. Here he is picking up his wife's ashes. And one of the sayings is, from the text. Arise, my beloved wife, I am your husband. Open your eyes, look at me. With you I can create all things. Without you I am powerless. Which, I don't know, it's a terrible scene, but on the other hand, there's something lovely about this idea that in Hinduism, it's the only religion I know of where the gods are not quite full power strength without some female counterpart, right? There has to be both, male and female. Now, when I'm saying he's the god of dance, I don't mean this in any kind of, it's not like a waltz, right? Indian classical dance is not do-de-do. It's not gentle and smooth. It's very active and loud and forceful. It's an important art form in India, and Shiva is believed to be the master of it. The rhythm in a dance, there's like stomping, right? And this rhythm is like a metaphor for the balance and the heartbeat of the universe that Shiva is meant to be guarding. So it's a destructive looking and sounding dance, but in some ways it's meant to be protective. Here, let me just show you a quick video so you get some sense of how this is not like what you might be thinking of when you're thinking of dance. Okay, so that's called a Tandava. So that's what I mean by Lord of the Dance. But at the same time that he's this god of destruction, he's also the savior or the creator. There's this idea that at one point, when the gods were stirring up the milk of creation, this cobra came along, Vasuki, the evil cobra, and he was going to spit into the milk of creation and destroy the whole thing. But right at the last minute, Shiva swooped in and like caught the venom in his throat. And he keeps it there. He has saved all of creation from this snake. Snakes, by the way, you might think of, why is a snake a fitting symbol for Hinduism? Pause here and ponder that for a second. Another way Shiva is the creator or destroyer is this little goddess in his hair. You might have seen her in the statue. Her name is Ganga, like from the river Ganges. The story about how the Ganga River came to be is that she was really angry about something. These gods are always getting angry. And so she sent down this like torrent, this destructive flood of water to the earth. And Shiva channeled that. He controls it in his hair. So she's captured there in his locks, right? She's channeled as a river. And you can see her often depicted up in his hair, reminding viewers about Shiva's protective, creative powers as well. And then lastly, the third eye. Remember how I told you it's super destructive? It's like a laser of destruction. Well, there's another story too, that at one point his wife, Uma, covered his eyes. She's just playing around, you know, like she comes up behind him and is like, guess who? Covers his eyes, trying to be all cute. But if Shiva's eyes close, then the universe will end. It will be destroyed. So he opened up this third eye as a way to save the universe, right, from darkness and destruction. So that light would return to the cosmos, and with it, order and justice. So is it a symbol of destruction? Is it a symbol of protection and saving the universe? It's both, right? That's what I mean by it being a contradiction. So he's a very powerful God, but he's the Lord of all of these things that seem so completely opposite and contradictory. He is the God of contradictions. And some professor here is talking about how above all the Indian deities, gods, Shiva embodies the contradictions of the universe and human thinking. So why is he both this and that? Well, because we are this and that. We are not just one thing. There is too much. If God is really God of everything, then it has to embody and own all of these contradictions.